Gosh, it got so quiet. Hi, everyone. Everyone's ready. Everyone has their coffee all caffeinated up. I've got lots. I've had lots this morning, so get ready. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Well, awesome. We're doing a test of our virtual participants also can hear. Well, great. Hi, everyone. My name's Allie Franklin. I'm Director of Client Strategy. I'm so excited to be here today to host our Red Door Speaker Series, where we aim to inspire and educate our clients, our fellow marketing community on timely topics. I don't know a more timely topic than GenAI, so excited that we have this killer panel in front of me that is going to be helping us navigate this ever-changing world that I know we're all just trying to keep up with right now. So thank you all for being here. Housekeeping items. Okay, so before we get started, just a few quick things to cover. So for those of us joining online, if you'd like to share this event with any friends or colleagues, it's not too late. So just grab the link that's in the chat window right now. I think we have that going out if you'd like to share that. And then we have set aside time at the end for questions from the audience. So for those online, hold on to your, or actually for those in person, hold on to your questions. For those online, you can put your questions in the chat in the Q&A tab at any point throughout the platform, if you're, or throughout the time, if you're kind of have it top of mind and don't want to forget. And then lastly, rest assured, we will be sending a recording of this event and then a copy of some of the materials that you all received, some notes, and we're also going to send some information on the webinar that we're going to be hosting on October 3rd. With that, let's introduce our panelists, shall we? Okay, first up, we have John Ferris, President at Red Door Interactive. John, what's the best part of your job?
I think it's bringing together really talented people and maybe some robots too to tackle big challenges and take advantage of opportunities for both the agency and our clients.
Awesome. We got mics down there. Good. Awesome. Next up, we have John Toth, who's joining us. He's the Senior Product Manager at BrightEdge. John, tell us a little bit about your role at BrightEdge.
I have a pretty cool job. I get to create things. So when it comes down to being in the search space, I come from the agency background, and now I'm with BrightEdge. So just having an understanding in terms of how people engage with search in general has been fascinating, and creating tools to assist them with those types of solutions. But then also with generative AI, this is relatively new to all of us, me especially. And so it's been a matter of trying to figure out exactly how to leverage those solutions, those tools to enhance workflows and keep things a little simpler for us, because I know we all wear many hats. If there are ways to become more efficient, then that's ultimately the goal. So that's what I've been really focused on.
Awesome. Thanks, John. You can hand that over to Oliver. Next up, we have Oliver Embry, who is the Senior Director of Product Innovation at Mountain. We've had Mountain on our panel before, but Oliver, tell us a little bit about what is going on at Mountain when it comes to Gen AI right now.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the Red Door team for having us as well. Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. We've been really focused on how to allow Gen AI to really impact performance for our customers, thinking a lot around creative and sort of the overall sort of campaign generation space, and really allowing our customers to drive greater performance through some of these solutions. Looking forward to sharing further with you all as we kind of delve into the topic.
Great. Thanks, Oliver. And last, we have our very own Ron Hadler, who's our VP of Data and Innovation here at Red Door. Ron, I hear you're currently in the running to participate in a slightly maybe bigger panel than we have here today at a little event I like to call South by Southwest. Ron, tell us a little bit about how you got to have that opportunity.
Well, first I'd like to say I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords, just in case they're listening. But can I say marketing works? We have a very brilliant marketing team here at Red Door, and they put me up. I put together a little 1.5-minute video, and now we're just kind of waiting for the results. So super excited and slightly nervous.
Thanks, Ron. Wonderful. Well, I think we've got a really well-rounded group here today that's going to bring some unique perspectives. So excited to get started. So my role at Red Door as Director of Client Strategy is really to anticipate our clients' needs. And that's in really anything from understanding what's keeping them up at night, helping them with effective marketing strategies, and really just helping them achieve their business goals. So when my clients have problems, then I have problems, right? What keeps my clients up at night keeps me up at night. So I would guess, show of hands, that AI might be one of those things keeping this crew up at night. Am I getting nods? Yes. Show of hands. Yes. Maybe some sleepless nights. I think the scariest part about AI is when it comes to really understanding it, not having those questions answered really can lead to anything from impact on job security to even just the security of our personal data. So that can be really scary, right? And as a fellow marketer, I get it. I completely get it. It's tough to even know where to begin. I think that's what a theme was that I heard in a lot of the discussions that I've had with my clients and with fellow marketers. But what we hope to do today is really to start to answer some of those questions that might be keeping you all up at night, and just arm you with more confidence so that you can go back to your jobs and be able to make better decisions. So to really lean into our topic today and help prepare for this event, we thought, what better way to start than with a little tool called ChatGPT. So we asked it, what's keeping marketers up at night about GenAI? So you guys need to, I want to see some nods or shakes if they're right? So what we heard was privacy and data security, content generation and authenticity, ethical use, bias and fairness, job disruption, and transparency and explainability. We feel like that covers a lot of ground. What do we think? Nods? Anything missing? Nope, that's everything. Great. Perfect. Our job here is done. So I think that when it comes to these topics, what we're really trying to do today is answer as many questions around these areas as we can. We're not going to cover it all, but what I like to say is this is our starting point to really give you guys a place that you feel a little bit more comfortable, and we can kind of keep that conversation going. This panel here has a wealth of knowledge. So for the next almost 60 minutes, we're going to try to answer as many of these questions. We've also armed you with a great cheat sheet. I love a cheat sheet to bring back to your desks and kind of keep on the side. I already have mine there. So you'll never have to Google things like large language model, neural network. Not that I've ever Googled that before, but now you've got a cheat sheet. John did as well. How do you think we created this? No. So you've got this really ready to bring to meeting and sound smarter at the very least, right? In all of your conversations back at the ranch. So, and if after all of this, your question's still not answered, we do have time at the end. So hold on to those. And I think we can get started. Let's do it. Ron, I'm going to start with you. So what I hear from a lot of our clients, I think we can all relate to, is where do I even begin, right? Marketers are really busy. So what do you think is the best way to stay current on all of the tools and features and updates and really ways to use AI?
Yeah, so every single news outlet is essentially putting out an article at least once a week. So if you have a favorite media outlet, that's where to go because they will have articles on that. I will also use the word landscape. This goes for all technologies. So AI landscape, generative AI landscape, you'll come up. Last I looked, roughly 300 platforms already just for generative AI. These are all, into different categories such as data, chat, text, audio, video, all be able to create it with generative AI. But that is the short and fast. If you can get in the landscape, then you have a plethora of kind of like platforms you can start using. But everybody's talking about Gen AI right now. It's the reason we're here. It's on everybody's lips.
I love it. Yes, I love it.
So just depending on like what medium you prefer to consume content in. From a podcast perspective, a couple really good ones that I've been listening to. Macon, the marketing AI Institute. So they have a conference every year, but they also have a weekly podcast. It's really good, and they're really on top of this. This is like all these guys are doing. So that one's really interesting and timely news. And then if you're into long, that's pretty quick. It's like half an hour usually, I think. If you're into longer form stuff, Lex Friedman, if you haven't heard of him, check that out. He's interviewing all of the greatest minds in AI, or at least the magnates. So 3-hour interview with Zuckerberg, if you can make it through that. Elon Musk is coming up soon, I think. Sam Altman. So some really interesting, longer form, getting deeper into the future of AI. And then if you're a newsletter person and you just want it fed to you every day, there's one called the Neuron Daily. That's really nice. They've got like a nice basic resource list that they send you with your welcome email, and there's some good daily content there too.
As well.
Go for it.
Are we still got 30 seconds?
We do. We do.
More of an internal opportunity. We've set up sort of like a monthly office hours with our product team. That, I mean, obviously you all have seen, like, probably even since this our meeting came out, like, technology's evolved and changed. And so we've started like a monthly sort of office hours where people come in, kind of give updates on projects they're working on sort of cross-functionally. I'm in our product organization, so we have someone on the creative side, someone on the data side, someone on the machine learning side, all coming in and sharing like sort of what they've seen, project updates. And there's so much overlap because these technologies are evolving and changing. And so instead of stepping on each other's toes, everyone's kind of sharing, because you might have seen something in a newsletter or in a Lex Friedman podcast that someone else might not have seen because the technology is changing so much. So kind of creating like a monthly office hours has been really helpful for people to come in, and they don't have to come in if they don't want to, but it's really helpful to kind of stay abreast of like what people are doing across the organization, because everyone's sort of finding things passively and actively in some really cool ways.
I love that. And another follow-up question for you, Oliver. I know when we were talking, you told me that you recently, maybe via that forum, uncovered an AI tool that would help us figure out how to incorporate AI into our workflow, which feels a little like the Matrix or something. I don't know, but maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was from someone else on our sort of platform experience team, had sort of come in and realized like how it could actually kind of aggregate some of these tools better, and be able to kind of really evaluate and understand the why for certain parts of your organization, which was pretty neat. But there's definitely kind of an element of inception there when we were looking at it and still trying to comprehend exactly to it. But it was super helpful for others to understand and come to it.
That's great. I love that. So typically, I know personally when I would be researching tools or trying to better understand how to update my workflow or learn from experts, I would typically go to Google, right? I'd be searching things. Google's been king or queen. But I think with invention of, what's that? TikTok is my number 2, I would say these days. But I think with the invention of ChatGPT, Google now has Bard. Question for you, John Toth. I need to use last names. We've got 2 Johns. Ferris. Okay, we'll go John and Ferris. John, I'd like to hear from you. How do you feel like these new tools with GenAI, so ChatGPT, Bard, will have an impact on the way that people search for answers?
Yeah, it's a good question. So did a lot of research prior to coming here, so I didn't sound completely, unequipped to answer these types of questions. But I mean, basically, when it comes down to Google, for years, I predominantly focus on local, right? And so when it comes down to local search, local intent, Google's always been trying to identify what is it that this individual is trying to do. Are they trying to buy something, do something, eat something, whatever the case is? And so Google has become very adept at becoming that front door for a lot of these brands, right? And so with the evolution of zero-click searches, I think there's going to be a natural evolution just in search in general. Instead of it being algorithms and this black box to interpret your search intent by keywords, I think that generative AIs could be introduced and get into a lot more of predictive personalization to be able to automatically identify what the searcher is looking for without the expanded use of cookies and search history and everything else like we have in the past. I think it's going to naturally evolve to allow us to be able to put in a simple query without having to spend a ton of time with prompt engineering and get a result back to delight us. What is the fallback of that? I believe that the downside to this type of search is going to be those additional or the loss of clicks to your organic links, right? So I think that's going to be a natural byproduct. So as marketers, as techno evangelists, whatever, we need to come up with content that's going to really push the envelope to delivering and delight our customers with the content that we're putting out there.
Thanks, John. I love that. I think when it comes to updating our website and keeping content fresh, right, that's always top of mind, especially I'm sure for this crew of marketers here. But in the past, I think marketers have spent a lot of money on this aspect of the business, right? Content creation, maintaining their website. So, Ferris, question for you. How do you feel like marketers should be preparing their digital properties? So anything from websites to social platforms to be able to respond to this shift in behavior?
Yeah, it's really interesting because if the 10 blue links go away, that classic UI that we have with Google, then what is the incentive to create new content? But these models need fresh data, right? So there has to be some sort of incentive. And you could see, Bard and the incantation within Bing of ChatGPT that they're providing reference links. So those we will probably still have, and people are still querying whether it's conversationally or using a keyword kind of phrase-based approach. So I don't think that behavior is going away. I think the UI will change. I think the UI has already changed, and it's going to continue to evolve. Google has a lot invested in both search and AI, and so they want to try to create that UI that blends those things together effectively and still incentivizes brands and people, bloggers, publishers, etc., to create that fresh content, because without it, the large language models don't have a fresh training set and they become less relevant. So what should marketers do? I think at the end of the day, it hasn't changed much if you were doing it right for the last 20 years, and it's probably not going to change much moving forward, which is create content, write text content, create entertaining, video, audio content for your target customer. And whether they get there through search or they get there through a link within one of these generative platforms, or they hear about it from a friend. I just mentioned a couple websites. So like whether they learn it from somebody else, you're still going to be serving their needs. You're going to be meeting that intent, whether it's a local intent or educational or transactional intent. So it's that EEAT that Google's been talking about, which is expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness. If you can be that to your customers, you're going to get rewarded by whatever platform is trying to drive customers to web pages, social, etc.
Jonna, do you want to add to that?
Actually, I was going to say it's more or less a lot of the same things. EEAT is still very much important, right? So we haven't really changed the SEO game in a number of years. It continues to evolve, but I think that we can use that to our advantage. And so with these zero-click searches and just the ability for GenAI to delight us with the results, we got to really create content that is going to inform our user base on new things that they haven't already heard from. Just rinse, recycle, and repeat of same content, or just pushing everything into ChatGPT to hope that we can get just a breadth of content isn't going to be good enough. It's got to be authoritative. It's got to be able to identify the pain points. Using those questions frequently asked for any given topic is a really good way to help inform, because those are the logical questions that are out there. And if you can get that zero-click link because of the or zero-click result because of your investment in that content, you're going to be that much better off.
I think that idea of rinse repeat is top of mind right now when it comes to the creativity and the uniqueness of content out there. That's been, I know, a concern or a question of mine. I know a marketer once said to me, I can smell a ChatGPT email now from a mile away, which, listen, we all have done it before. But I think some of the best marketing ideas have come from really brilliant minds, right? Those unique, strategic, creative ideas. Oliver, question for you. Are you worried that we will lose that level of creativity and uniqueness in marketing with AI? Why are we not?
No, I don't think so. I think I think is actually like a lot of these, like I think with a lot of these, generative technologies, it's kind of getting rid of that sort of blank page, blank space syndrome, and just kind of opening up people's opportunities to kind of actually have more time to whiteboard, whether or not it's remotely or it's in person. It's kind of getting you to that point that it's sort of that 90 or 80% mark, whatever it might be, and then being able to put on the red door touch or mountain or whatever it might be. Because I've seen it, it's definitely not as quality as any of the things that our marketers have put out for Mountain in terms of content, but certainly allows them to maybe open up whether or not it's like the agenda for the brainstorm or it's the framework for what you could look to do. Some of those things that maybe could have been rinse and repeat to allow everyone else in the room to actually spend the time and energy, even if it's I know all of our time is precious, especially kind of we're meeting to meeting. Even allowing 20 more minutes of brainstorming and creativity can go a long way towards that flow that gets the brilliant ideas that you were speaking to.
Yeah, I think we're actually heading into an explosion of creation. And I think that we're not going to be hamstrung by these platforms, but we're actually going to be enhanced. And it's really about the speed at which we're going to be putting that out. Right now, there's an explosion on Amazon for all of their books. So because people are just doing this so fast. You've got record producers, which are now producing an album within 3 days for $500, which would have cost in 3 months in time and tens of thousands of dollars. Speed is where all of this is headed and how fast you are using it. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to AI partnered with a human.
That's great. And just a reminder, if you could put your microphone closer to your mouth, I want to make sure all of our virtual participants can hear you. Thank you, Ron. But on that note, actually, that brings up, I know, a question I've had and heard from a lot of people, which is around staffing and talent and how that might shift the job landscape and the kind of a team model. So Ron, if you want to take this maybe first to start your perspective, you manage a team of pretty talented people. How should managers prepare for AI's impact on staffing, right? So should we be preparing for certain jobs to be obsolete, or is it more of a shift in responsibilities and expertise?
If I look way down the road, every job's obsolete when it comes to AI. I read a really interesting article here the other day. It said, people are worried about, and mostly your, junior folks are really worried about losing their job. But this one actually pointed to CEOs. Sorry, Reed. Hopefully I still have a job tomorrow. And really in the sense of, some of these figurehead CEOs that are really just there almost as, kind of like they think they have the unique look, but what about GenAI? Maybe they can take those positions too. So I think we're not really looking that it's really available to take anybody's position because of the wealth of knowledge. Now, again, I still come back to human and AI as that combination. And what I see when I think about that is this is your assistance, really beneficial to your junior, mid-level folks because they can level up fast, right? They're not waiting on a senior strategist or somebody else to answer their questions. They can get unstuck. The only way you're gonna not get unstuck is you're exhausting your own energy, not able to ask another question. Gen AI doesn't get tired. So, and that's how it's going to affect it, is that I'll probably hire less because Gen AI makes one person 3.2 people.
Follow-up question on that one, I think for Ferris is, are there any additional trainings or certifications or schooling that you think the upcoming classes of marketers should be adding to their resumes to help prepare for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're, like Ron said, they can be using Gen AI to learn, and students in university should be doing that as well. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. Students and ChatGPT, but they should be able to use generative AI as their assistant, their tutor, their mentor. Like it's a virtual person that with 130 IQ that you can ask any question that you want. So I think that's number one. Number two, yes, there are courses out there today, like more around prompt engineering and that sort of thing. What's interesting to me is that, like, yes, it helps level up junior, mid-level people more quickly if they're using it to learn, just like people in the past would use Google to learn faster than they could at the library, right? At the same time, I think right now it is a tool that is most effective in the hands of an expert at something. If you can prompt it very specifically, regardless of your prompting skill, if you dump a bunch of knowledge from your brain in there about the question that you're asking, rather than like one sentence, you put a paragraph and a half in there, you're going to get a very meaningful response. And then you layer your individual experience on top of that, your tone and voice on top of that, which, maybe 6 months from now, we won't have to actually add the tone and voice. You just say, read my last 500 emails and add my tone of voice. But at least you can add your expertise and your lived experience to that. A robot does not have lived experience. So I think that's where we're going to add value. So I guess, long story short, yes, there's plenty of courses out there on prompt engineering. I wasn't joking about TikTok. I think if you get GenAI prompting and tool techniques into your algorithmic feed for TikTok, you're going to get some there are people that are crushing it on TikTok with like just how advanced of techniques they're coming up with. So that is one area. Or there's, like the Marketing AI Institute that has some really great coursework on just how to use GenAI effectively.
I just started getting on AI Talk and it's great. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's great.
Yeah, for sure.
On that note, I guess question for any of you, are there any roles that you think marketers should be advocating for in the future to help kind of start that process of preparing for what AI might be doing? It could be a new role that's never existed. I know this team here, this panel is very in touch with innovation and thinking forward. So what should marketers know about specific, maybe new roles we should be considering that we're not talking about now?
Like my short answer is like it should just be baked into every role, but yeah, there might be specific roles that help facilitate GenAI.
I think going back to Ferris's point, I think the prompt aspect of it, in terms of like, good input in, we'll get, greater output, like around that in terms of understanding whether it's prompt engineers or, prompt associated marketing opportunities. I think, as you said, good data in will provide greater context and data out. I just want to go back quickly to like the management thing. I think one thing that I was talking to a couple of people on our team about is, I'm sure a lot of you on your teams are like, oh, I wish I had more hours in the day to do X, Y, and Z. And, if that can help you with that email draft or whatever, think about what those things could do. Like, what are those hours that you had back in the day that maybe, AI might have helped you with to actually think about, oh yeah, mentoring X, Y, and Z or whatever it might be. So turning on its head in terms of time saved to create opportunities for time elsewhere.
So I'm going to say a little something controversial. I think, prompt engineering and all of this work and people are putting into it is a snake oil in some senses, in the sense that AI will solve our prompting problems. It will prompt you. You won't have to prompt it. So that is coming within 12 months. All these folks are earning $300,000 as a prompt engineer will go away. They will write themselves out of a job. The point is that, this is the first public sort of platform that is available for the masses when it comes to AI. Before, it was in the back room with, a bunch of DevOps folks working in deep data. And now we have the first killer application for artificial intelligence, which is generative AI.
I guess piggybacking off that, one thing I've been thinking about, and I actually saw an article, I think it was on Forbes, and at the bottom of that article, it said 100% created by humans. And so I think that there's an interesting kind of evolution to this as well. It's like we all want to get into the AI game, be able to harness it in some capacity. And certainly there's going to be industries and careers born from AI and just whatever it leads to. But I think that there's still going to be a hunger and a thirst for 100% human-based thought in terms of what kind of value that does provide. So I don't really have that formally baked, but based on that article I saw in Forbes, like we may start to see that just the same as shop local. What is it? The day after, on Saturday after Thanksgiving, right? Same kind of concept, like really support those that are going through or not even the motions, but using their expertise and dedicated to whatever they're creating, and then obviously sustaining that.
And I think we're in a unique moment with GPT-4 and the big advancements in large language models. I think to give a hat tip to Ron Weber, he posted on LinkedIn the Gartner kind of hype cycle, and GenAI is at the peak of overinflated hype for what AI is going to do. So but at the same time, that that doesn't mean that it's all hype, right? And the way that the Gartner hype cycle works is you go into this trough of disillusionment, and then there's this like peak productivity that comes out of it. And those companies that can most effectively take advantage of a technology, even when it's at the overhyped stage, build it into their workflows, come out of it with a competitive advantage, and that they're much better prepared when that peak productivity cycle hits, because they've been on the wave the whole way along. So that's one way to think about it.
Speaking of hype, question for maybe all of you or anyone who would like to start. What are you most excited about when it comes to AI, right? We just talked about a lot of different ways of incorporating it into our workflows, increasing productivity. Where, you guys are all a bunch of innovators. So what are you most excited about what this is going to allow us all to do as marketers?
AKA nerds, you mean? Okay.
I'd like to use the term innovators. You said it, not me.
I think just from my perspective, I think I've already alluded to it, but it's a time saver. Like if we all wear many hats, I think if there's ways that we can get some of that time back and actually start using our minds for more productive purposes, as opposed to doing like the brute force manual, mechanical turking of certain elements of our day, then I think that's a huge, huge win.
Yeah, from our seat at Mountain, I mean, we have a connected TV ad platform, and like creative is probably one of the greatest sort of friction points to onboarding and also kind of opening up new customers. And we've been working on some things that kind of on the generative side for creative, but less so to kind of replace sort of content teams and but also just kind of open up new opportunities. Like we're trying to go after smaller, kind of more local customers that maybe 5 years ago would never have dreamt to be on TV, and to be able to kind of open that up as like democratizing that in a really cool way is sort of how we're approaching it, like opening this up as a new opportunity to allow these companies to kind of run on CTV forever. So that's been sort of exciting to delve into as a way to kind of open up the channel to smaller customers that never dreamt to be on it before.
Back off of that. Yeah. Just on the small business side, that's probably what excites me the most, is for entrepreneurs and small business to be able to go to market very efficiently and quickly. That's also less threatening to us because we deal with enterprise marketers, obviously. But like as an entrepreneur with an idea, you could have a name, a logo, a website, a social ad, and a few social posts. You could create that in a day or two with a couple $100, like literally like today. So it's really exciting to be able to bring things to market that quickly, or maybe for a small business that already exists but hasn't had the opportunity, doesn't have the $10,000 to pay somebody for a WordPress site, and and all of the resources that larger marketers have, that they have the capability to do a lot of that on their own. Is it going to be like the best thing ever? Like, no, but it's going to get them to market and they can iterate from there.
I would say accelerated growth for humans. I mean, I think, I noticed the difference that when the internet came out and Google, that I was able to self-teach, and I didn't have to go through and get to somebody, find a mentor. And so I think accelerated growth for humans, the fact that I can start new topics really quickly, don't have to click through 7,000 links to find something that I find meaningful. I can get an answer almost immediately. And so it's just accelerated growth. My range of knowledge, I can take on more topics, not that I'm already not splintered, but just being able to learn and pick up new things is really, really fascinating.
Thanks, Ron. So with more access, I'm hearing that as a theme of accessibility. So when we think about the role of humans versus robots, I know something a little more specifically on the digital front that I've heard some of our media team discuss is there could be a greater opportunity for things like click fraud, right? As there's more access to bots being out there. Maybe Oliver, question for you. Do you think click fraud is something that marketers should be increasingly worried about as AI progresses? And how do you feel like we can kind of prepare and maybe detect that a bit?
I'm probably not the best person to answer this because we don't deal as much in that, more on the streaming side, but happy to.
Maybe Ferris would be great.
Yeah. It's not really a Gen AI issue as much as it is just like an AI issue. Bots in general have been a problem within media for a long time. The short answer is like fight fire with fire. Like there are solutions for click fraud that you can invest in that use AI to detect bots and to try to get you refunds for those wasted dollars. I mean, the other way to approach it, which is kind of more the philosophy that we take, is let's leverage the whitelisting capabilities and those sorts of things that are within the major platforms, and then let's pay attention to the analytics. Maybe let's not just rely on impressions and clicks as the end all be all of how our marketing is performing. If you're paying attention to cost per acquisition, return on ad spend, ROI, then you're going to know pretty quickly like what platforms are most effective, and you kind of bake the wasted dollars into that equation and what's worth it and what's not. If there's some click fraud involved, but you're getting a fantastic CPA and it's leading to real customers at a lower cost per acquisition than some other channel, then there's not really a major problem there.
Thanks, John. It was great to hear. I think there's a lot of excitement around what's to come and what AI is going to allow us to do and arm us in our day-to-day, but there's also a little bit of maybe fear and concern. I think maybe some of this crew might be a little worried. I was reading an article in the New York Times that said that Jeffrey Hinton, who's known as like the godfather of AI, when he resigned from Google, he said, I quote, "Right now, they're not more intelligent than us as far as I can tell, but I think they soon may be." That's kind of scary. So question for you, Ron, what are you worried about when it comes to AI?
Boy, there's a broad topic. So, I think really what's scared, and I mostly when I talk to non-marketing, non-technical folks, they're just not sure what's real anymore. And so, I have a bunch of friends who are part of Burning Man, and all the pictures that were coming out of Burning Man, and everybody stuck in the mud. Is that real or is not real? Nobody knows. And is it just the media wanting to, get on that? Damn hippies. So the point is that, what do we trust? How can we trust? And while, Google is even starting to put into their image generation platforms a point that will tell you whether or not it's AI or not, that is not going to be for everything. You can't do that necessarily with text. So how do you, why some people may be able to tell an email generated text that will get better and it will be undetectable. So there is definitely that. I think some of the things that I worry about just for family and things like that is this ability to take 30 seconds, 60 seconds of audio and then mimic your voice. And you're stuck in Mexico in jail and I need $5,000, Grandpa. And it's your voice and they can answer questions back and forth there. And so just everybody not worried about that, have a family safe word. Everybody knows a story that's very unique, get around that. But it's just these, I think worry about even like the upcoming elections. I think we're going to have more propaganda in that election than we've ever seen, and it's going to be very dangerous. It will definitely have an impact on things like that. Those are things where the bad actors, and we always have bad actors, they always use technology in the wrong way, right? And that is a constant threat. And it's just being vigilant, and it is playing catch up.
Anything else this panel is worried about? Not that we all need to have more to worry about every night.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on some of the stuff Ron was saying about like opening up like sort of human creativity. I think on the other end, like sort of, team sort of paralysis by analysis of like, seeing what's going to happen to my job or this, that, and the other is like, kind of losing maybe that sort of cohesion or creativity around that. So thinking that, why do I want to work on this? Because a robot might, take X, Y, and Z. And so just sort of that fear around like, what does that look like for our company team, X, Y, and Z.
I think that everything that Ron said is basically what I would echo in terms of just my overall concerns, not to belabor that point. But I mean, basically these models, they're being trained by something, right? So obviously if the output of whatever those trainings happen to be are biased in some capacity, I think that's what scares me the most.
Thank you, guys. I think that confirmed all of my concerns as well. Thank you for validating those. I think that another thing that's top of mind for me that maybe we didn't talk about too much yet is just the idea of privacy. I have so many questions around how are they getting all this data? Is anyone else thinking that? From GDPR compliance to there's surveillance technology that's like looking at our faces outside buildings and using all of that into the models. I guess maybe John or Ron, why should we be discussing privacy when it comes to AI, and what should marketers be focused on?
Yeah, I think Ron could probably cover the corporate side. Just from like on the more individual side, yeah, they need the data. The biggest companies in the world are the ones that are leading the charge on this effort because they're also the ones with the most data. You think about Meta, they have every Instagram post, every Facebook post for the last X odd years. You think about the treasure trove of data that Microsoft has, both on the individual and the corporate side, probably more on the corporate side with LinkedIn and chat and those sorts of things. And then if you think Elon bought Twitter because he has some political bent, or he wanted to own the public square, he also wanted to own 1 trillion tweets and 500 million tweets that are coming out a day and use that as a data training set for whatever he's got up his sleeve from an AI perspective. And he has been a little bit more low key. He's just got a lot going on, I guess. So maybe he hasn't been low key about it, but in comparison to other things. But this is he was part of OpenAI. He co-founded OpenAI with Sam Altman, and he actually left because they had a split over whether it should remain a nonprofit creating an open source version of GPT basically, versus getting in bed with somebody like Microsoft and going for profit and launching something like they did. And so he left that company, but he did not stop thinking and working on it. So anyway, the other thing other than Twitter is Tesla, right? It's a car company, but it's really a data company as well. They have camera sensors, not just dash cams, but camera sensors on every vehicle that are also collecting, trillions of frames of video of the entire world. So you think about what could they do with that? We'll find out.
When it comes to the corporate side, yeah, there's lots of pitfalls. And one of the important things is making sure any platform you're using does not use the data inputted for their permanent training set, right? They can use it for localized so they can make good responses. And anything that's fed into like a chat GPT doesn't necessarily become part of the permanent data set. Their API is particularly safe for putting in large amounts of data and allowing you to incorporate that and get answers. But it's really, as far as, data privacy is really about individuals, right? So don't be feeding your individual information into chat GPT. I don't think I need to say that, but it is one of those things where they will vacuum up that information. You're getting most of that information from the public square without rights. That's kind of what the controversy is as far as, copyright, licensing fees and things like that. By the way, ChatGPT doesn't pay any licensing fees. Midjourney, the image creation, doesn't pay any licensing fees. So they're not copyrightable. So you can produce all these things, but you can't copyright them. On the other hand, a tool like Adobe's Photoshop and their AI tools, they do use and they do license images. So you can use those and copyright those. Big difference. That is the way the futures go, is that these folks, authors, artists, will all get some sort of licensing fees from using their work being used within generative AI.
So we should not put our social security number and bank account number into ChatGPT. Noted. Write that down, everyone. Yeah, don't give it to grandpa if he calls and asks for it, unless he says the safe word. So what else can consumers do to protect themselves in this environment? Any other tips from this crew?
I'll go last.
Yeah. AI is
anything?
like,
can we do anything?
I mean, AI is like air at this point. So there's not a lot you're going to be able to do to avoid it. I think what Ron said, just be careful with your personal information. The other thing is be careful what AI tools you use, and vet who created this thing, how serious of an actor are they, make sure they're not a bad actor, of course. But they're as we move from kind of self-prompted generative AI into kind of the next generation that's already happening now as these AI agents, where you basically give it a task, but you don't just ask it to answer a question, you ask it to do something and generate content in order to do that thing. So, hey, comb through my Gmail and send a party invite to my 10 closest friends. And it actually goes out and finds those people, creates, opens up the window, creates an invite based off of your prompt and sends it. And then maybe, as the RSVPs come back, that they put it into a spreadsheet for you and blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of corporate types of things that you could do. You could imagine using AI agents as well, but you're giving up your data to do that, right? It's just like anything, in today's world. There's no free lunch, so you're giving up your data to get something free in return. And so you just have to be really mindful of that's happening and what you're giving up control of. I mean, one of the more scary ones is called Rewind, and it's just like capturing everything that you've done on your Mac all day as a way for you to keep a diary. But like, you got to really trust that Rewind team with your data to be able to do that.
So one more question before we go to questions from the audience, because I kind of want to turn this to a little bit more of a positive place, because I think that's a little scary for all of us. Thank you for now haunting my nightmares, John. I'd like to hear from maybe one or two of you. How have you used GenAI recently to help you save time? And let's maybe save the it helped me write an email for. We've all done that before. Maybe what's a unique use case you guys have used it for recently?
Just from a product perspective, I created a product that assists with existing page content that allows through prompt engineering, it will take and evaluate a page, and then also identify based on the content of the page and the paired keyword meta descriptions and page titles. So obviously that's one of those things where it's really good to get that information accurate so that it can be indexed and found appropriately on search. And it's kind of time consuming. So this is just a massive way to kind of get that out of the way. Also created a local product to help with review response. So not to sound disingenuous, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's also tasking for a lot of individuals. Coming from the agency space, a lot of times in the past, people would set up these canned responses based off star rating. Well, if you're a consumer and you see that, you don't really feel like they care. They're just doing the motion, right? Whereas at least GenAI can come back, evaluate what the reviewer had said, star rating and everything else, and at least come up with a bespoke response. So I think there's certain types of tools like that that can assist you. Just use, your intelligence, right?
Yeah, I mentioned that we'd started to kind of go into more local and small customers, and so we've been working with our innovation engineering team on indexing and tagging sort of content from Mountain's website to sort of create like an SME within the onboarding process to kind of reduce some of that friction. So if you're a local customer and you might not know the difference between kind of prospecting and retargeting, and you're net new to some of the space, we're not going to have you kind of click out of this sort of onboarding experience to kind of go go back and maybe go offline. We want to kind of make this as like as comfortable and as sort of seamless, but also as helpful as process as possible. So we've been taking all of our content that our marketing team comes out and kind of turning that into a bot with a chat, within our sort of onboarding process to kind of make that space more comfortable for someone, knowing that there's no silly question that can ever be asked.
Okay, hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble with HR. So I've fed cover letters into ChatGPT and asked for sentiment analysis. So this allows me to understand the mind and how somebody's approaching when they apply for a job. That's one use case. The other use case is I am not an artist by any means. And so I really enjoy the fact of getting into Midjourney and creating the perfect images for a PowerPoint slide. Now that may seem simple, but I would spend and agonize over images, and I know they're copyrighted on Google. So this allows me to easily kind of do that and get the perfect image and do things that are fantastic that nobody would really create an image from before.
Your client service team thanks you for that, Ron. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to make sure we leave time for questions. Thank you, panelists. So I think do we have any questions in the Q&A tab on Teams? But I think we can open it up to in person. We'll make sure we get a microphone over to you. Please just make sure you speak into the microphone. Anyone questions? Reed.
I'd be curious the panel's perspective on with the kids that are in college right now. We're in this kind of awkward phase. So what advice might you have, or what thoughts do you have about for academics who are teaching these kids, or certainly the managers that are about to receive, the next couple years worth of kids coming out of college who get caught in this weird middle ground of AI? I think this harkens back for me of the uptick of social, of we didn't know how this was going to affect our kids or affect how we work. And we're in this it's like toddler years right now, but they're caught in the thick of it.
Yeah, I've continuing to I think not just the students, but also educational institutions pushing the importance of critical thinking. Like if you're a student and you use ChatGPT to write a paper and you take the question from the professor and you plug it in and get whatever response, like that's how kids are getting busted, aside from any sort of advanced detection tool that the university's employing or whatever. It's like if a bunch of responses look almost exactly the same and they're very good, and sometimes they go outside of even the scope of what was covered in class or the textbook that they have, it's pretty obvious what happened. I think it's that being said, they should be using ChatGPT just like I started using Google when I was in college, not to date myself, when it was newer, right? So it's using it as that tutor with 130 IQ that you're bouncing questions off of to actually understand a topic. And then I think the educational institutions have to shift to a little bit more of go back to more of a Socratic method where it's almost like the thesis thing. Like everybody submits their paper, but then you've got to go, answer questions live in class to prove that you know that thing. And if you learn that thing from generative AI, cool. Like that was probably a pretty smart thing to do. As opposed to, I think people are just going to learn differently, right? So yeah, critical thinking and learning differently.
I don't know if this exactly answers your question, Reed, but on that note, John, I also just saw a video on TikTok recently. What's the line you say? I just read an article recently. No, I admit it. It was on TikTok, but it was about how teachers, so it's not just about how learners and students need to be adapting, it's how teachers need to be embracing this more. So it's less about how do you not get caught for cheating. It's more teachers knowing and suggesting that students use ChatGPT and different AI platforms to help progress their work. But then maybe in class, there's a different curriculum or lesson plan. Maybe it's writing an article, and yes, there's an assumption you would use ChatGPT, and then in class, you're editing it and making it better and evolving it and adding your own personal voice. So it's embracing it versus finding workarounds, which I thought was interesting. Any other questions?
John, you and I were talking at the beginning of the year just about transparency with your clients. What kind of AI policies does Red Door have?
Yep. Yeah. So probably right before or after that conversation, we had created a policy for how it's used by the subject matter experts and when they and when they're responsible for basically referencing the fact that they used ChatGPT to create, or whatever the platform that they used to create this thing. So there's a couple elements to that, and it just kind of goes along with common sense of a lot of things that we were talking about today. If you're going to use it, you are required to use a platform that has been properly vetted. So we're not, using some open source model that Red Door hasn't approved. And then number two, that you're using it in an expert fashion. You're not just doing the student thing where you add the professor's question. You're using your expertise and experience to craft a really good prompt and iterate through those prompts, and then that you are adding your lived experience and the right voice tone from the client to that thing. And if you're using it in that way, and the output is significantly different than what ChatGPT just spit out on the first try, then we're not necessarily having to disclose that. It was part of an input, just like using Google to research something would be part of an input, right? Also, though, adding, and I think this goes back to the student question too, is like adding source links. So if you didn't use Bard or Bing and you use ChatGPT, that you go back through and any facts that you're adding, which we would do for search, going back 20 years, add the right links to verify that you have validated the trustworthiness of that content from an authoritative source. And then if it's something that's, just like a review that is bespoke and it makes sense to have GenAI do that, as opposed to, wasting an hour of time at $150 an hour or whatever to write something canned, that we just state, hey, this was generated by AI. So that's the stated policy, and it's part of our handbook now. So if you don't have that in your organization, probably a good time to think about creating one.
Yeah. This is Madeline. I am going to take us back to fear for a second. Yeah, buckle up. But also how brands can combat that. So this actually came up. Dave, I'm going to put you on blast. I don't know where you are. But Dave from Point Loma reached out and was just asking about starting to think about this alpha generation, or what they're calling the glass generation, because on the older end, they're entering high school. So they're these young adults starting to like get jobs, get their own money, and they're entering adulthood. And I wanted to bring it back to this concept of trust, because this generation is growing up with, they've experienced in their formative years, they've experienced a global pandemic, war in Europe, they're in a highly digitized age. And so they have all of these things that they're thinking about, and there's a sense of fear. So AI kind of feels like an opportunity for another sense of fear. But Ron, we've talked a lot about in the past how brands need to combat this sense of fear by building trust and articulating how, in the best possible ways, can we build trust with our prospective or our core audiences. So I'm curious, what are recommended ways that brands can jump into their core audience's shoes, put on like the hat of the audience mindset, and combat any fear by building trust in their brand?
Yeah, and we've had those conversations mostly in regards to consumers giving up data, right? And so, in order to kind of do that, you can't just use generative AI to generate content, right? It needs to be vetted, it needs to be understood, it needs to be in the right voice. So in order to sort of build trust with your brand, it is, again, being authentic, being transparent, checking for bias, all of those things that are naturally built into these platforms. These are the things, even from a legal perspective, that the governments are starting to look at. Transparency, where you're coming out. I think one thing that I've not seen in there is licensing, which is what most of the lawsuits are about, for people getting really upset. But making sure that, if you are using generative AI, that you're calling it out. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that content because it wasn't generated by a human. I thought the fact of something entirely made by humans was interesting. I got a little Matrix moment there. The thing is that, we just have this sort of distrust with something made by the robots, right? It's why I kind of started with the humorous comment. I, for one, embrace our new AI overlords. Embrace is a really good word. This generation, these younger folks will embrace that. They will grow up with that, and they will be able to combat, and understand it. They'll navigate it much better than anybody here in this room. So that is just a new world, brave new world that they're growing up in, and they will navigate it. They will be delivered the tools. They will create the tools that'll help us understand bias, transparency, and trust. I have faith in the youth.
Yeah, and I think as the models become better at excluding bias from their training set, and also the way that they the algorithms themselves that actually GenAI is actually the best tools out there are really good at being nuanced. So right now we live in this like black and white world where there's facts and there's alternative facts. But like what is the nuance around the fact? And GenAI is actually quite good at that. And it's more objective, right? Because it's not bringing that emotion. Again, not to say that there isn't bias in these tools today that exist, but they are working very hard to exclude those biases, and it could actually become a really powerful tool in that respect around truth. So,
a real quick question. So we've been touching on it, bias, and making sure that the results are truthful. What initiatives and ideas are y'all seeing because not everyone's going to fact check their results. So how do we get the general public? Like, how are we protecting people? Because we're seeing bias and untruth spread rapidly throughout social media and just searches today. Is there anything that you're seeing that's trying to curb that?
Yeah, like in that last election cycle, just social media alone was like crazy how much misinformation there was, and now with AI, it's like Gen AI, it's even crazier. I don't have necessarily a solution other than like we got to hope that the people that are putting these billions of dollars into training the models know that that's a big responsibility of theirs from an ethical perspective. But
yeah, critical thinking is really where you need to be. And I think what we have, even more now is we have a lack of critical thinking, and we are just accepting all the stuff that's pushed at us, right? So I think it's important for us to pull stuff sometimes versus just having everything pushed. So making sure you're not just, absorbing, but you are, active. And so critical thinking is the important part. If something doesn't sound right, check it. And you've got to fact check. You cannot just accept anything at this point, which is, what's the fear? What is real? What's not real? And I think we're still going to go through that quite a bit in order to get out the other side. I wouldn't say unscathed.
Another question, truth and lies, but from a different angle. I'm thinking about AI myth busting. Can you think about a popular belief that someone may have, maybe it's a business owner, maybe it's someone in marketing may have about AI that you'd like to debunk or just bust a myth?
I mean, I think just that it's like magic. Like they don't really know like what's behind it. And I think like the glossary that we put together is like a first step at just trying to educate people, like what are the mechanisms that are allowing this to happen. Maybe a myth that kind of goes along with that is that Gen AI is not general artificial intelligence. It's not super intelligence. It's basically like autocomplete on steroids, right? So we're not there yet, and nobody knows. Like if you listen to these Lex Friedman podcasts with Zuckerberg and at all, they don't know what pace or when we're going to get to super intelligence, or if we ever do get to super intelligence. People are concerned about it or excited, depending on who you ask, excited by it. But nobody knows. So accepting something a pundit said is going to be an outcome of AI is maybe just a myth to bust.
So isn't it imaginative that the movies are some of our big myths, right? Terminator, Matrix, right? And as John was speaking, the leap to actually get there where we have these, self-walking around robots that are thinking on their own, have all the right decisions, have the right capabilities to actually move. The human body is an amazing mechanical wonder. And it takes a lot for these robots to actually just do the things that they're doing, which is jumping, dancing, and things like that. So there's a big leap for us to get from where we are now to, Arnold Schwarzenegger coming after us.
Thanks, Ron. I'm getting the music is starting at the award show closing music. To wrap us up really quick, rapid fire for these panelists. I want to know, what's your favorite Gen AI tool? Ron, go.
Just ChatGPT, Midjourney second.
Oliver?
Yeah, I was going to say it's like a Stable Diffusion or Midjourney.
John?
ChatGPT.
John?
Yep. code interpreter within ChatGPT
Ooh.
and creating tables in ChatGPT.
Ooh, love that. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today at Red Door Speaker Series. As a reminder, we will be sending a recording of today's session, a copy of your cheat sheet, as well as some notes and information about our upcoming webinar. I hope everyone learned a little bit of something today, at least something that will make you have a little more restless nights and won't keep you up. So thank you all. Please get some more coffee, some more pastries, and feel free to network. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day.